Welcome everyone to Wrasslin Raw!
You're listening to Wrasslin Raw, the podcast that takes you back to when the World Wrestling Federation developed a little bit of an attitude. Thank you for joining us. You're here with Ryan Arico.
So dark, so clammy, so stiff.
Joe Giammatteo.
Yeah, my mama always told me, take trash out, don't bring it in.
I'm the one and only Jason Bartlett, and we're going to examine WWE history one episode of Raw at a time. In this episode of Wrasslin Raw, we're going to be taking a look at the Raw that aired on May 13th, 1996. This Raw was recorded at the Civic Auditorium in Sioux City, Iowa, and features Vince McMahon and Jerry the King Lawler on commentary. Are you guys ready?
I'm ready.
Ready?
All right, then. Let's get into it. There is no setup here tonight. We go straight to intro. Welcome, everyone, to Monday Night Raw. And then into our first match of the night. Ahmed Johnson defeats Zip with Sonny and Skip by pinfall in 3 minutes and 14 seconds. Sonny is noted as being absent here at the start, but she is present in spirit as there are quite a few individuals wearing Sonny shirts there in the arena. They must have been really hitting the merch stands in between matches here.
A young Joe.
We all would have worn that. And while Zip is there finishing up his entrance with Skip, we go backstage to Jim Ross, who is there getting a pre-match interview with Ahmed Johnson. Ahmed is visibly beating with oil. There was some weird timing here because Ahmed's promo starts good. Jeff Jarrett's guitar didn't stop him, the British Bulldog's table didn't stop him, but then the audio cuts, and we get a view of Zip and Skip in the ring. We get back to Ahmed just in time for him to be finishing up what he's saying, and we see Sonny approaching with a bottle of baby oil, her hand already glistening as she starts to rub Ahmed's pecs. She says she thinks Ahmed missed a spot, and this is where I had to ask myself whether I really believed she was being honest. Ahmed hits her with a zinger, though, saying his mama always taught him to take trash out, don't bring it in. Sonny's reaction was perfect in its surprise and frustration. Then the bell rings and we get going, and I say that loosely. The first series of movement with Ahmed powering through Zip's holds made me think that that's probably what it looked like whenever we used to practice wrestling. Like, the first thing I thought of watching this was when me and Ryan used to go back and forth doing like the test of strength and just really, really soaking into it and like trying to really, get the crowd amped up in our completely alone fake wrestling match.
Which I'm sure looked terrible.
Yeah. This very much looked like that. It really made me think of that. And then, coming out of that, Zip gets dumped straight onto his forehead. I jumped and said, "Goddamn," out loud. And keep in mind, this is the same recording venue from last week when Zip got dropped on his head.
Oh, that's right.
Twice in a match. So this makes a total of 2 concussions so far in Sioux City for Zip. Not a good time for Dr. Tom Pritchard in general in Sioux City, it seems. But then Skip switches in, and the referee is apparently unaware of the switch, despite Skip and Zip looking nothing alike other than their blonde hair.
A 50-year difference between the two.
The blindest son of a bitch to not see the difference between these two people. And that was just kind of ridiculous. Unfortunately, there wasn't much else going on here. Skip, or was it Zip, did a decent dive over the top rope when Ahmed reversed him, but it didn't really last all that long because Ahmed got the spine buster, the Pearl River plunge, the pin, and the 3 count. Sonny was, of course, very angry about this. Ahmed hangs out to get cheered for a minute, and honestly, I was just really happy to be able to move past this. Joe, please, what did you think of our show opener?
When they switched guys, Skip and Zip, do you know what I thought immediately?
What?
Shit.
Where in the hell is Harvey Whippleman?
Yes. Yes.
He's been taking notes on the refs. Maybe he's scouting a new tag team. Who knows? But where the hell was he during this?
Could have used them tonight.
Derelict in his duty.
Man, these are the tag team champs, guys. Skip and Zip getting jobbed out.
Wait till you have what I have to say about them.
They're getting jobbed out here. That's not good, especially to start off the show. You could have used anyone else. I know it's Ahmed Johnson. You're trying to build him up, but you could have used anyone else in this situation. But you chose to use one of your tag team champions. It's just it's not making any sense. Very nice sell by Skip on that spine buster. Like he did like that extra flip onto his stomach there.
Well,
I mean, it probably did.
It was
paralyze
involuntary.
him.
Yeah, involuntary after he burst a disc.
Yeah. But I don't have much else to say about it. This was a terrible match, if you even want to call it that. It was just a bunch of shenanigans.
Yeah.
And they still lost. They cheated and still lost.
I'll start talking with Ahmed Johnson backstage here. Vince informs us that Ahmed Johnson became the first Kuwait International Tournament champion. I mean, whatever the fuck that is. So, I mean, what an accomplishment for Ahmed Johnson there. And then Vince goes on and makes a Desert Storm joke about the WWE or WWF at the time storming Kuwait. I thought that was funny, especially given the little sentimental video that we're going to get later about Kuwait, that he's busting jokes about them here. But once the match started, I'm going to be honest with you guys here. I was very close to making Skip and or Zip our jobber of the week. And really, the only thing that kept me from doing it is that they have the tag team belts. And it didn't feel right that the jobber of the week would have a WWF belt. So I decided against it. But that does not mean they did not deserve it tonight, because they were just here to be fucking jobbers. I mean, look, not even one of them could compete, not beat, but even compete with Ahmed Johnson. They had to pull off this stupid fake that they look alike despite their drastic age difference. They had to pull this off in this match, and together, their combined forces with Sonny, so I guess you could say a 3-person team, still were not able to take down Ahmed Johnson. So piss poor match, really nothing to talk about here, but man, they have turned the tag team champs into a bunch of fucking jobbers here. And what a sad state of affairs.
Yeah, I mean, we really can't highlight that enough here, I think. The tag team champions. And what's funny is that, the tag team championship is what kept you from giving them jobber of the week. But the fact that belt holders were in contention at all.
Shameful.
Yeah. And, I've been thinking a lot about this lately, because I distinctly remember saying whenever the Bodydonnas first debuted that I was a fan of theirs from back in the day. And I was. Whenever I was younger, I loved the Bodydonnas. But it really hasn't held up at all. This is one of those...
You didn't remember this.
No, I didn't. And what's funny is that I do remember the whole which one is in the ring gimmick. I'm pretty sure, I used to watch Superstars. At this point, this is when I was kind of starting to get more into Raw as opposed to Superstars, but I was still watching a fair amount of Superstars, and I'm pretty sure I saw more of their matches there than we've seen on Raw. But yeah, man, just not standing the test of time. And then there's this next segment that we're going to talk about, guys. I'm really just not even sure how to go into this. I wasn't able to come up with a clever segue. So I'm just going to say it. We're going to go now to a fucking Warrior University commercial.
Infomercial.
Yeah.
The Ultimate Warrior is there, and he has completely dropped the gimmick in order to pitch Warrior University. He starts by calling himself Warrior Man. Hey there, guys. Warrior Man here.
Billy Mays here.
He goes on to say that any academic institution can help you fulfill prerequisites and obtain a degree, but how many can prepare you to fulfill a dream? And this is where we get a confirmation, because we kicked this around a little bit over the past couple weeks. Warrior University was indeed a wrestling school, which the Warrior here claims has the WWF seal of approval. God damn. And that, along with the Warrior guiding you, is almost a straight path to the WWF locker room. My God, the bullshit is getting deep. So guys, I was really, really taken aback by the way that there was just zero attempt at kayfabe here. This was really ham-fisted, and I can only assume that Warrior insisted that creative control over this be included in his contract, because this was terrible. If there's anybody that can help me to understand this, Joe, please, what the fuck was going on here besides the obvious?
Well, what is the curriculum? Exactly.
Steroids.
At the Warrior University.
Well, that's the prerequisite, steroids.
Okay. Yeah, Vince really lost on this deal a lot. Like, what is he getting in return?
Taken to the fucking cleaners on this deal.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Warrior is just, man, he talk about going into business for yourself. You know, it's like people talk about Shawn Michaels doing stupid shit during this time, but the Warrior is plugging a wrestling school. One of the worst wrestlers of all time, like wrestling skill wise, is plugging a wrestling university. Doesn't make any sense.
To just show how ridiculous this little segment is, we have the Ultimate Warrior, as you just stated, Joe, pushing a wrestling university while showing this exact same fucking footage where there's no wrestling moves in the entire footage. That's the footage they're showing, except the only difference is we have the Warrior voicing over a fucking sales pitch for his university. Unfucking believable. This Vince, man, did you get fucking burned on this? Like, I don't know. This has to be probably the worst deal he's ever made.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially whenever he says that he has the WWF seal of approval, because you know that's correct. He does.
Mm-hmm. Well,
yes.
He's saying it on Raw.
Yeah.
I mean, he clearly does.
But rather than lend Warrior University any kind of credibility, that just cheapens the WWF. Man, you'll just slap that seal on anything, won't you, you fucking whore? Well, thankfully that spot didn't last too long, and I'm not sure I would have been able to handle much more than what we got. I might have been driven into an aneurysm, but now we're going to move on to our next match. Vader with Jim Cornette defeats Duke the Dumpster Droese by pinfall in 5 minutes and 50 seconds. I love that they finally added the "It's time! It's time! It's Vader time!" to Vader's entrance music. They hadn't had that before. I mean, they've been saying, you know, what time is it and it's Vader time and all that, but this is the first time it's been added to the audio track.
I could only guess it's because Vince was insisting to work in the man they call Vader into the song. So
yeah, there's a minimum quota that we have to hit of saying that phrase per episode.
And we'll get there in this one.
Right here at the outset is where we learn that Jim Cornette is going to be joining commentary. He goes down and sits at the table and shakes hands with Jerry the King Lawler across the table. So imagine Jim Cornette, then Vince McMahon in the middle, and Jerry Lawler on the opposite end. And Jim and Jerry were talking over Vince, shaking hands in front of his face, like right at the tip of his nose, and basically just ignoring Vince in total throughout this. It was, well, at least as much as they could. It was pretty fun to watch. As a matter of fact, I would almost prefer to just watch that instead of the match that we ended up getting. But then, you know, I was down at first. And then in the ring, Vader spits in Duke the Dumpster Droese's face. Just lights him up right in the face with a loogie. I can appreciate that gesture. So I was reinvested in the match. But again, it didn't take long for me to get pretty down on the action. And then when Duke the Dumpster clotheslined Vader to the mat, and it looked fucking terrible. Vader barely allowed himself to lay down for this clothesline. I tuned out. Vader was looking really slow and sloppy to me in this match. Duke the Dumpster, he's never been the greatest worker, so it's safe to say that this was nothing to write home about. And what felt like a lot of time passed with nothing worthy of any note happening. I felt like I briefly lost consciousness and then came to just as Duke was falling over while punching down at Vader. He couldn't even stand upright to punch down. I was a little surprised to see the Dumpster calling for some kind of top rope maneuver. I was not surprised to see Vader dodge it and Duke the Dumpster completely pancake himself on the mat. It didn't look like he had protected himself in that landing at all, and I honestly wondered if he didn't realize Vader was going to roll out of the way. And that's the beginning of the end. Vader hits a power slam and the Vader bomb for the pin and the 3 count. And that's pretty much all there is to say here. I'm not sure why that is or who's to blame exactly, but somewhere, sometime along the line, this match just did not come together. Ryan, what did you think of it?
Yeah, I mean, it didn't come together mostly because Duke the Dumpster Droese was involved. This is another case. Here we are, 2 matches in a row. I'm thinking, should I give Duke the jobber of the week here? I mean, he certainly deserves it. But I decided no against it solely because there is someone later in the night that is even more deserving of it. So I'm just going to leave that as a little bit of a teaser for earlier, but that's the only reason Dumpster did not get Jobber of the Week tonight, because he fucking deserved it. He got his ass fucking just handed to him here. He came out here like a bum, which he is. We knew from the beginning this was just going to be a beatdown from Vader, and it wasn't a very good-looking one. The only good-looking thing was towards the beginning, Vader gets Dumpster in the corner and starts landing some real punches to Dumpster's face. I like seeing that. Maybe it got Duke into the fucking mood to realize that he doesn't belong here in the WWF. But other than that, I also kind of enjoyed Vader had Duke in a sleeper hold. And every so often, he would stop the sleeper hold to either wrench on his jaw or like double ear smack him before he'd go back to the sleeper hold. I kind of enjoyed that. But when Duke went up for that high-flying maneuver, like you said, Bartlett, you knew the moment he started to climb that Vader was going to roll out of the way. And, of course, he did, and then Vader gets up and, slams Duke and then gets the Vader bomb and jobs him away for the win. Pretty forgetful match. I don't know if it was quite as bad as the first match, only because that involved the tag team champs jobbing out. But this was another example of having some stars that are starting to job out here more and more frequent. So I think that's something we need to keep our eye on.
Should start a campaign for Duke for Jobber of the Week.
I have a feeling he'll get that at some point here.
Yeah. Well, his intro, I want to say there was some really loud, fake crowd noise for his intro. Very noticeable. When Vader comes out, a few things from commentary. Vader comes out and Vince says, "Here comes a load," many would state. A real big load. Jim Cornette had a great line. He said, "We thought he was a garbage man. It turns out he's just garbage." Which is just so true.
100% true.
The evil cackling between Jim Cornette and Jerry Lawler was kind of obnoxious, but also kind of funny. Duke got up a couple times after getting some offense and was kind of trying to pump up the crowd a little bit. And I was saying out loud, "Don't say time to take out the trash." Don't you dare. And he did not. So that is a positive from this match. pretty impressive dive off the top for a bigger guy like Duke. But yeah, it was obvious he wasn't going to land that. And another great Vader bomb from Vader. I love that move. So that's about all I have to say about it.
Yeah, not a whole lot really going on so far tonight, so we're going to move it along, and hopefully it picks up. Next week on Raw, Stone Cold Steve Austin will take on the Wild Man, Mark Marrow, with Sable, and Savio Vega will be taking on the 1-2-3 Kid. I am looking forward to both of those matches. Hopefully we get some good action there. Oh, and Jake the Snake Roberts is going to be taking on the British Bulldog. I hate to say this about a Bulldog match, but I am not looking forward to that one as much.
Well, we saw it in its entirety from that shitty footage from Germany.
Yeah, well, hopefully that's what it is. Hopefully they'll just play that all back again.
They'll just replay it, yeah.
And I can go scoop the litter box. But let's take a look at what's going on in the arena now. It's The Undertaker and Paul Bearer coming down to the ring for an interview with Vince McMahon. They've got the gold casket there with them, and things get started with Paul Bearer. Paul Bearer does a fantastic job on the mic here, playing it up in the way that only Paul Bearer can. And just as Vince moves over to talk to The Undertaker, Goldust and Marlena come out to interrupt. Marlena looks amazing as always. Goldust quotes Johnny Ringo from Tombstone, while the crowd had a loud chant going on of that homosexual slur that rhymes with maggot. Not a very good look, Sioux City. Which makes me wonder, and this is kind of more of a rhetorical question, I guess, but I would love to hear your opinions if you have opinions on this. So, why is it that Piper in blackface gets deleted, but this audio isn't taken out of the mix? That seems really hypocritical, but at the same time, Peacock is an extremely shitty streaming service that I fucking hate in general.
There's your answer.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's not surprising exactly, but who makes these decisions? Does anybody know? I don't know. Don't buy stock in NBC, I guess is what I'm saying. But this interaction in the ring between Goldust and The Undertaker was fucking great. I popped my ass off when Goldust said, "You can lay me in that coffin anytime." Gold, Jerry, gold. This ends with Goldust trying to hold hands with The Undertaker. The Undertaker turns it into a test of strength that puts Goldust to the mat. And if that wasn't great enough, out of nowhere, Mankind hits the ring and savagely attacks The Undertaker. Goldust sticks around in the ring to watch in fascination as Mankind inserts his fingers into the epiglottis of The Undertaker, penetrating the throat. Put that image into your mind. Goldust there on his hands and knees, crawling in closely to get a nice up-close view of The Undertaker getting knocked unconscious by the mandible claw. And again, that's my phrase, not theirs. It has not been called the mandible claw yet. And then Goldust says something. This is something that I wasn't quite clear on. He somehow says something or does something to convince Mankind to leave, which he does, and Mankind gets this look on his face real quick of sudden understanding or inspiration before leaving, so I'm not sure what's going on there exactly quite yet, but Goldust proceeds to take off his robe and practically fuck The Undertaker's unconscious body.
Necrophiliac.
While Mankind just rolls out of the ring, leaves it to happen. But just when Goldust turns his head away, The Undertaker sits up, scaring the living shit out of Goldust, who freaks out and scrambles out of the ring, hitting himself off the crowd barrier in a mad dash to escape the ring, Marlena following behind. The Undertaker and Paul Bearer then give chase. We cut to commercial, and here is where we end this segment. I loved every second of it. There was not a weak presence here at all. And Ryan, you called it last week. Your memory was correct. You more or less predicted that this is going to happen. So what did you think of this scene?
Yeah, when I saw it, I was like, this is exactly what I remembered. I was a little bit off in that they threw him into the casket. I was off on that part, so you could dock me a point there. But outside of that, I was pretty spot on what happened here. And this was a great job from everyone involved. Starts off with Paul Bearer cutting a absolutely perfect promo. I mean, just really hammering home why he's the most beautiful person in wrestling. It was fucking fantastic. And then we quickly see a kid at ringside in full warrior paint, and I immediately thought back to us in high school. I couldn't help not to, but briefly after that, Goldust and Marlena come down, and Goldust quotes one of my favorite movies of all time in Tombstone when he quotes Johnny Ringo with the pale horse and whatnot quote. So I popped my ass off for that. And I thought that Goldust did a great job of being his typical perverted self, but The Undertaker also doing a fantastic job of just no-selling it, just staring at him blankly as he does this until he quickly moves into the test of strength maneuver and sends Goldust to the ground, and then Mankind comes out, attacks the Undertaker with the mandible claw, leading us to the end of this segment where the Undertaker sits up, and again have to give props to Goldust. What a hell of an acting job he did, showing how scared he was, the way he rolled out of the ring and rammed into the crowd barrier in his confusion. Just, I thought really, really good stuff here. And if I was going to give one criticism for this entire segment, it would be that it almost made me more excited for the Mankind Undertaker feud and less for the upcoming casket match, but I think that's just nitpicking.
Do you guys remember when I sent you a clip of Dustin Rhodes on a Inside the Ropes interview on YouTube?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
I forget what that was about, but during that same interview, he tells a story about him and Bruce Pritchard pulling a rib on Undertaker. And Bruce Pritchard told Goldust before this happened to grab Undertaker by the balls. And he said that he did that. I think they cut it out. There's a part on this where you hear the crowd. It's before the Undertaker sits up. The crowd gets louder. And I feel like they cut it out right there. There was some editing there, I believe, but the story's hilarious. If anyone wants to watch that video, he said that the Undertaker had no idea that was coming, and I guess when Undertaker went to the back, he was he was pissed, looking for Goldust, and Bruce Pritchard had to save him and say, "Look, it was my idea. It was my idea." So that's funny, but this whole thing was great. I loved it when they're holding hands. Goldust is saying all that creepy shit. And then he got to this part where he starts talking. He says, the stiffening of the, and just starts crumbling when Taker starts squeezing the hands. So that was great. And I mean, Mankind coming out, I mean, it sort of confuses things, like you said, Ryan, a little bit. It kind of makes you look forward to that more. But I kind of like Mankind and Goldust working in cahoots.
Yeah,
because
I do like that.
You know, you've got the bizarre Goldust and the deranged Mankind. I mean, it's cool to have them kind of working together here.
Yeah, and it adds to, well, it will end up adding to the story whenever we get to, Mankind and the whole mommy thing. It just goes to show that he's got a thing for blondes, you know? But I loved all of this, man. Something about, I want to say contrast, but how much contrast is there really? You've got these two guys that are just balls deep in their gimmicks, if you'll forgive the expression for Goldust, but they're both so invested in their gimmicks, and yet they're nose to nose in the ring. And it's such an image because they're both just living in it and reveling in it. Goldust being creepy like we talked about, and Undertaker no-selling it because, you know, a fucking zombie would no-sell that shit. And it's Goldust like slowly figuring out or trying to figure out how to get into the Undertaker's head, but then we find out that he actually already has his secret weapon. Maybe it's Mankind, the one person that has paralyzed the Undertaker so far.
On 2 occasions now.
Yeah. I really like the way this is going so far, and I am looking forward even more now to the casket match at In Your House. Something that I wasn't quite as much looking forward to, but we'll talk about it. Our next match. Justin Hawk Bradshaw with Uncle Zebekiah defeats Aldo Montoya by pinfall in 3 minutes and 57 seconds. And ladies and gentlemen, I can't believe I'm about to say this. Aldo Montoya is our jobber of the week. Take it, Ryan.
Thank you, Bartlett. Yes, that's right. Aldo Montoya is this week's jobber. And over his last few appearances, he's definitely earned it. You know, tonight, Aldo checked off all the boxes for a jobber. Nobody cared about him. His entrance was completely talked over by Vince and the King, talking about Shawn Michaels. His only purpose here tonight was to get his ass handed to him by Bradshaw. He even got a split screen thrown at him, and a cherry on top, he was completely humiliated with a jobber ending when he was branded. His fucking limp, lifeless body branded by Bradshaw and Zebekiah. So, yes, Aldo Montoya is most certainly a jobber now. Aldo Montoya was born Peter Joseph Polacco on October 16th, 1973 in Waterbury, Connecticut. Polacco trained at the Hart Brothers training camp in Alberta, Canada under Keith Hart, but was mainly trained by Lance Storm and Chris Jericho. Polacco made his in-ring debut on his birthday, October 16th, 1992, and over the years has used the ring names Just in Time, PG-187, PG Walker, PJ Walker, PJ Polacco, Just Incredible, and Aldo Montoya. After training with the Hart Brothers, Polacco was quickly signed by the WWF in early '93 as enhancement talent, losing his first match to Lex Luger on the March 1st, 1993 episode of Raw. Now, if you guys remember, this would have been during our very first episode, during our Raw so far. So, because of the format then, I would have missed my chance to do him as Jobber of the Week, so I'm very glad to rectify that today. Polacco would job until late '94 with the WWF. Then they would decide to give him a push, signing him to a full-time contract and giving him the Aldo Montoya Portuguese Man o' War Kiss of Death, gimmick. For the next few years, as we witnessed before our very eyes, Polacco's Man of War personality would never catch on with the fans, and after a short run of wins, would quickly be demoted back to jobber status, which brings us to our current state of affairs with Aldo. In 95 and 96, Montoya would only appear in one pay-per-view, the 1996 Royal Rumble, where he participated in the Royal Rumble match and lasted only 2 minutes until he was eliminated by Tatanka. His last match on TV with the WWF was on August 5th, 1996 episode of Superstars, where he lost to Jerry the King Lawler. After the match, Lawler poured a whole bottle of Jim Beam whiskey down Aldo's throat.
His epiglottis.
Yes. Things would get even worse for Polacco after his humiliating loss to the King on Superstars. In early '97, the WWF sent Polacco to their developmental promotion in Memphis to hone his skills. And after some time there, he asked for his release, which was granted. In the summer of '97, Polacco joined ECW, first debuting as PG-187 in a loss to Chris Candido. But after a name change to Just Incredible, he quickly became one of ECW's biggest heels. In 98, he adopted Nicole Bass as his bodyguard and began to feud with Tommy Dreamer. During his time at ECW, Polacco would end up feuding with just about every big name at the company. But by far his biggest accomplishment was when he defeated Tommy Dreamer at the 98 CyberSlam for the ECW Heavyweight Championship, holding on to the belt for nearly 6 months before dropping it to Jerry Lynn. Polacco stayed with ECW until they were bought out by WWE in 2001 and returned to the WWE after the buyout. He was first put into a stable with X-Pac and Prince Albert called X Factor, but the stable went nowhere, and quickly Polacco found himself in jobber territory yet again with the WWE, mostly showing up on the company's B shows and losing pretty much exclusively. Polacco's last match with the WWE was on December 8th, 2002 episode of Heat, losing to Test. Oh.
Once a jobber, always a jobber.
After being released in early 2003 by WWE, Polacco headed to the independent circuit where he has been for the last 20 years. On April 28th, 2012, Polacco was scheduled to wrestle at Shane Douglas's Extreme Reunion show, but was removed from the card and the building after he was found passed out in a chair. On August 8th, 2012, Polacco appeared at the King of Trios tournament for the promotion Chicoria. There, he reprised his Aldo Montoya character and joined forces with the 1-2-3 Kid and Tatanka to form Team WWF.
Good Lord.
They would lose in the first round to Team Extreme, which was made up of Jerry Lynn, Tommy Dreamer, and Too Cool Scorpio. As of today, Peter Joseph Polacco is still wrestling, his last match losing in a King's Ransom elimination match to Mike Skyros on October 30th, 2021. Polacco's current record, 412 wins, 672 losses, and 21 draws, making him officially a jobber.
Well, thank you, Ryan. It was bound to happen.
I did not know that he was a dungeon guy.
I was not aware of that either.
For some reason, I assumed he was he trained in Jersey, like Bam Bam and those guys.
Yes, in the Monster Factory or something.
Yeah.
You said that he trained under Keith, but was that in the dungeon? Or was that a separate place?
Yeah. Yeah, because Lance Storm and Jericho were there at the dungeon too, from what you said there, because he trained with them.
Right. They were his main trainers, but the head trainer at the time was Keith.
Okay. Yeah, I was always a big fan of Justin Credible whenever he was in ECW with the Impact players, but I was more of a fan of his tag team partner, Lance Storm.
I mean, he had quite a run at ECW. I didn't really get into depth because, we're covering WWE here, so that's kind of what I wanted to cover here. But yeah, he had a very lengthy and decorated career at ECW.
That is such a 90s name for a pay-per-view event, too. CyberSlam.
Yeah.
I'll always remember him as the guy that had Nicole Bass as a valet. All right, back in the ring. My first note, Aldo Montoya is still here, and he is still getting pyro. Can't believe it.
First jobber of the week with pyro.
Yeah. Uncle Zebekiah comes out along with Bradshaw for their entrance, and Zeb is carrying that branding iron still. Let's see what happens there. We start off with Bradshaw just no-selling Aldo. That doesn't last long, though, as the work begins in earnest, and by that, I mean Bradshaw starts to mostly just beat the shit out of Aldo Montoya. Aldo had a couple attempts at offense, but they were quickly dismissed by Bradshaw, and it apparently takes 3 drop kicks to knock Bradshaw down, but only 2 clotheslines to drop Aldo Montoya, which gets the pin and the 3 count. Once it's over, Justin calls Zeb into the ring to press that inked brand into Aldo's chest, leaving a nice clean JHB stamp. Thankfully, nobody tried selling this like it was a red-hot branding iron like last time.
Wow, he was out conscious, though, what could he do?
still.
He just got fucking pulverized.
Boys, not a lot of notes here because I am not creative enough to think of that many different ways to say that Aldo just got his ass handed to him for 4 minutes straight. Nothing really stood out here to me other than the fact that Aldo got pyro. Joe, please, what did you think?
Well, Aldo deserved the ass beating that he got. Justin Hawk Bradshaw, though, he's not quite connecting with the crowd yet. And I feel like it's probably because he's basically in another one of these stupid occupational gimmicks. He's kind of like a cattle farmer or something. Like,
I guess.
But I mean, he's a good wrestler, I guess. I mean, those clotheslines from hell that he would later name that move were pretty good. But yeah, there's not much here. This was kind of just I guess a filler and still kind of giving us more of Justin Hawk Bradshaw, I guess.
I probably don't have too much more to add to this other than the enormous amount of shade that I've thrown towards Aldo Montoya during my Jobber of the Week segment, because that's pretty much all this was about, was highlighting just how far down the card Montoya has fallen. Bradshaw looked absolutely fine. Like you said, Joe, he doesn't look bad here. It's just no one cared about this match, and it was absolutely treated like a jobber match, ended like a jobber match, yet we gave this motherfucker pyro. Very forgettable. I really don't have anything much more to add.
Yep, and we're going to leave it at that because it was that forgettable. We're going to start off our next segment by highlighting the first Iraq War, Operation Desert Storm. Those citizens of Kuwait lost their freedom at the hands of the Iraqi invader, but now they're free, and with freedom comes the ability to see their favorite WWF superstars. Much has been made over the course of the evening about the Kuwaiti Cup, and here is where we get a little more detail on that. It was just an event that they had there in Kuwait to rake in some of that sweet, sweet Middle Eastern cash. Something that still goes on to this day, by the way. Not the Kuwaiti Cup specifically, but raking in that sweet, sweet Middle Eastern cash. It was pretty jarring to see Shawn Michaels talking to the camera with a bullet-riddled wall behind him. But then things took a turn when Shawn was at the beach talking to some fans. Out of nowhere, the British Bulldog attacks, striking Michaels and then dragging him off into the sea. The Bulldog yells...
Godzilla.
The Bulldog yells at Michaels.
Godzilla in a Speedo.
He looked like he was about to drown him, and then the Bulldog just
runs
off.
He attempted to drown him a few times.
He runs off across the beach while Shawn crawls back out of the surf. Such a weird little segment. I mean, I'm glad we were able to get this footage out of Kuwait, but Joe, what did you think of this Kuwaiti Cup segment and that attempted homicide on the beach?
Well, the attempted homicide I thought was hilarious. I loved it. I thought Shawn Michaels sold it pretty well. Of course, he wanted to get close, but not kill him. So it worked. Like you said, it was weird, but I loved it.
Yeah, this was, at first they're just showing us some footage of all the superstars strutting it around over there in Kuwait. But the footage here with Bulldog and Shawn at the beach, yeah, I have to agree. I was laughing my ass off when the Bulldog started to try and murder Shawn Michaels. I was thinking of Weekend at Bernie's is all I could think of. Yeah, pretty exciting and hilarious.
Well, we're going to return from Kuwait to go into our final match of the night. Shawn Michaels with Jose Lathario defeats Hunter Hearst Helmsley by pinfall in 13 minutes and 12 seconds. Hunter is out first with a gorgeous woman on his arm. Her name was Amy Peterson, and a Google search yielded no relevant results. And then it's time for the most charismatic, the most resilient, the World Wrestling Federation champion, and Jose Lathario, too, don't forget. Shawn's striptease lasts predictably long, and then the work in the ring begins. The initial tie-ups, Hunter's advantage in them, and the end result of Hunter acting insanely arrogant all played this up nicely. This was a great way to kick off this match. This causes Shawn to put on his rally cap, and by that I mean he takes his hair tie out. Something about Shawn taking his hair tie out makes Vince ejaculate as he roars, "Oh, Michael's getting ready to get down." Things stay somewhat silly throughout this phase of the match. Shawn hitting on Hunter's girl, Hunter comically getting his prominent proboscis injured, and Shawn playing it up. In case you hadn't noticed, Vince McMahon was really on his form during commentary for this match. And this was a match that, up to this point in my notes, was just as much entertainment as it was wrestling. But then wait just a minute, here comes Mr. Perfect down the entryway. It's been hinted throughout the night that Mr. Perfect was here, but now he's going to just stand there and watch for a little bit.
He has no business being out there.
No business at all. After a commercial break, things in the ring have heated up past the entertainment phase and more into some wrestling as Hunter goes on the offensive. Hunter was hitting Shawn with some great-looking clotheslines when I remembered that, oh, hey, wait a second, Jose Lathario's there. Why the fuck is Jose Lathario there? And just as I was realizing that, I was able to get a glimpse of him. He was just being really useless, standing in the corner and just kind of gesturing and tapping, and you couldn't hear anything he was saying, and we probably wouldn't have been able to understand it, and it just continues to make me wonder just why the fuck is Jose Lathario here? Hunter was hammering Shawn into oblivion in the corner, and that looked great. And it feels like we'd saved up all of our commercial breaks for this match, because we ended up going through a third commercial break at this point. I loved Vince yelling, "Keep Perfect away from there," right before we get a shot showing that Mr. Perfect was nowhere near the ring. He was still 20 feet away up the entryway. And then there was a decent amount of time spent watching some good wrestling. Nothing exactly jumped out as incredible, but it all looked good. This was an engaging match, and it was very certainly entertaining. Finally, we get to the spot where Shawn calls for the sweet chin music, and he hits it perfectly. It looked fantastic. Hunter did a great job of selling it, and Shawn Michaels gets the victory. Mr. Perfect then walks out of the arena with no further explanation of his presence other than a slight nod to himself as he goes, as though he was maybe confirming something for himself. We don't know. Shawn hangs out in the ring wearing his belt, and then we go to Jim Ross backstage with the British Bulldog. He's there with Jim Cornette and Diana Hart as well, and the Bulldog cuts a promo that probably sounded great to those out there that were able to understand him, but unfortunately I was not. And just between the yelling and the accent, it became kind of like a garbled mess for me. Then Vince was able to sneak in a really cheap, "But don't you think the Bulldog should be afraid of snakes?" prompt to JR and the Bulldog to remind us of that upcoming match against Jake the Snake Roberts next week. For that match, Shawn Michaels will be on commentary, and we end this episode of Raw with the Bulldog shouting, "You better stay away from my wife," as we fade to black. Ryan, please get us going with your thoughts on our final match of the night and the way that Raw ended.
Yeah, I didn't have a ton of notes on it, and that is absolutely for the better. I mean, it's because this match, no, I only mean that because, like, this match was fucking entertaining. Yeah, at the beginning, they were definitely playing into more of the entertainment aspect of it, as you hinted at there, Bartlett. But I enjoyed it. When Shawn Michaels held Hunter up on the ropes, I mean, it was very cartoonish, but he held his feet up on the ropes and then dropped them directly on his giant nose. It was hilarious to watch. And then that wasn't the only time. Shawn Michaels continues to hammer on that giant fucking nose of Hunter Hearst Helmsley. It was entertaining. I thought that they did a great job of playing it up, and Vince pointing it out every time, and Hunter kept on grabbing his nose in fear that it might get even larger. I thought they did a good job with that. And then when Mr. Perfect showed up, at first I'm, excited it's Mr. Perfect, but then I got sad because, I remembered that it's not actually going to go anywhere with Mr. Perfect. We're not going to really see him back in the ring, sadly. But Once the action came back from the commercial, though, they really did change gears from the entertainment, laughing, haha, cartoon stuff to just balls to the wall action wrestling. Helmsley had Michaels in the corner and he just fucking beat him. And it looked great. And Michaels, he just collapsed in the corner and sold it fantastically. The last half of this match, outside of the constant commercial breaks, was just really something to watch. You know, it's the reason that people in that stadium paid their good hard money to go see is to see a match like this between two absolute great superstars beating each other for, this was a long match. What was it?
13-12.
Okay, 13-12, but good match. And even at the end, we had this spot that was clearly choreographed where Hunter goes for a power bomb, Michaels reverses it into a Frankensteiner, tries to pin, Hunter rolls that up into a near fall. Yes, it was choreographed, but it looked really good. Michaels ends up nailing the sweet chin music for the win is, what we kind of expected, but I thought this was a treat to watch. Just absolutely fantastic match. I loved it.
Yeah, I think we all expected a great match and got it for sure out of these guys. Speaking of a great match, with Mr. Perfect coming out here, what could have been with him and Shawn Michaels,
Wow, yeah.
Pretty sad to think about that. But yeah, the comedy stuff towards in the first half of the match, I don't mind it in this situation because we have to remember that Helmsley is kind of a goofy gimmick right now. He's the do you have any gray poupon guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The highlighting of the nose, Ryan, you mentioned a lot of that. They really went hard with that. Twisting the nose, smashing it off the turnbuckle and all that
bonk
stuff.
It.
Yeah. Yeah, they really highlighted that, which was hilarious. Shawn coming down to flirt with Helmsley's girl left Vince drooling and speechless, of course. This match, just in general, I think was definitely Shawn putting over his buddy, and it worked well. I think he made Hunter Hearst Helmsley look like a really good wrestler.
Yeah.
Even though we've seen some pretty good stuff from Helmsley, but he's going up against Shawn Michaels in this match, so it's a lot different, and he definitely held his own. So this was a great job by Shawn Michaels to help put over Hunter Hearst Helmsley.
A mere week before he'll fall.
Yeah. Yeah.
This match was a great way to end this episode because, honestly, there wasn't a whole lot going on in the first half of this show. But Ryan, I think you put it best. Such a treat to watch because it wasn't a title shot. So, there wasn't that added sense of tension to it. It was just a fun, good old fashioned wrestling match and not over the top. I think that's the thing that I liked the most about it is that it was able to be fun and entertaining without crossing the line into cartoony shit or just the really stupid kind of theatrics that we sometimes get out of some of these guys. It was almost like a classy kind of cartoony entertainment. I'm not sure if that's the right word for it.
I think it's a perfect example of two guys that know how to work their business. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They know when to pull back and when to hit the gas.
Yeah. And they were having fun doing it. I think that's maybe something that I was trying to get at just now. It comes across that they're, like you say, they're two guys that are good at what they do. But not only that, they're having fun with each other. And it comes across through the screen. Yeah, awesome match. And a great way, as I said, to end our episode of Raw. So we're going to take it on over now to highlights and lowlights. Joe, please go first.
For me, the highlight is what we just talked about, the Helmsley versus Michaels match to end the show. Well, it should have ended the show, but instead we get Vince asking about being afraid of snakes.
Say it.
That old chestnut.
That's not my low light. My low light is the complete jobbing out of one half of the tag team champions to start the show.
Yeah, we again, like last week, gonna be pretty close here. My highlight, I loved the Undertaker Goldust segment. I thought it was very strong, but it couldn't overtake this final match with Shawn Michaels and the Hunter Hearst Helmsley. It was just a fucking barn burner. Highlight of the night. And low light, the Jobber Tag Team Champs. It sounds like it's an oxymoron, but somehow the WWF pulled it off. We have turned people who are tag team champs into absolute pathetic jobbers.
Well, guys, we're going 3 for 3 on the lowlights, and you've said it better than I could. Those tag team champion jobbers. Goddamn. I am going to differ with you on my highlight, though. As much as I did enjoy that final match, I was an absolute fucking mark for Goldust and The Undertaker doing their interview in the ring.
It was tough.
That was some great shit, pal. And I am so happy that we are getting to rewatch Goldust's early years here because, I've always been a fan, but I didn't remember it being as this fucking good. And it just keeps getting better. So that's my highlight. Joseph, do you have any contemporary wrestling news from on and around May 13th, 1996 for us?
I do, guys. The biggest news this week actually comes out of WCW. They have announced that they will be expanding Monday Nitro to 2 hours.
Oh.
Effective on May 27th, 1996. So they are getting way ahead of WWF. And expanding to 2 hours.
I think that is just 1 week before the NWO debuts, right?
I think that's the week after Scott Hall comes out and cuts that promo.
I remember June being a big date for the NWO.
Yeah, June was when Hogan joined.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, it's clearly getting ready for the NWO push, this 2 hour.
Adding to their roster. Yeah. Goldust missed the house shows this past weekend due to his knee injury, so they flew in both Jerry Lawler and Mr. Perfect to work the shows. But don't get too excited, guys, because Jerry Lawler beat Razor Ramon with Mr. Perfect merely working as a heel ref in the match. So still no wrestling for Mr. Perfect. Debuting in the ring this weekend as well at the house shows were the Gangstas in Paradise. Samu is now known as Sammy Slick.
Sammy Slick. Fuck me.
And his partner, who is the son of Sika, is called Night Train.
Night Train?
Night Train. And they were putting over the Smoking Guns all weekend.
Taking on Space Brain.
Yeah, really.
As terrible as that all sounds, the positive note here is the Smoking Guns appear to be... It seems like Billy Gunn is maybe coming back soon.
So Skip and Zip can solely take their place as jobber and give up those fucking belts.
Yeah. Someone who is not coming back soon is, I guess, the 1-2-3 Kid. He is not expected back until June, so he is going to miss some time. We will definitely keep an eye on that. And that is all.
All right. Thank you, Joseph. Illuminating as always. And that's it, folks. We are done with this one. I want to thank you again for joining us. If you like what we're doing here and want to connect with us, you can email us at WRASSLINRAW. Just add @gmail.com to the end of that to submit questions or comments. Check us out on social media and on every podcast subscription platform. While you're there, don't forget to follow and subscribe to get every episode of Wrasslin Raw coming to you every week. Give us a 5-star review and let your friends know how much cooler they would be if they became Rawheads like you and me. Next week on Wrasslin Raw, we're going to take a look at the Raw that aired on May 20th, 1996, with matches featuring Mark Marrow, the 1-2-3 Kid, and many more. So, for Joe and Ryan, I'm Jason, and this has been Wrasslin Raw.